Do you remember back in the 90s or the late 80s or the early 80s, mid 80s actually, like PC games back then, like where you would have to load them up in DOS, like you
Yeah.
stick the disc in and you'd have to do like run.
All right. Deep fried beats. How are you?
Pretty good, man. What's going on?
Oh, not much. Glad we could get together and talk about game sticks, gaming, nostalgia. Um, you want to just get into it? So I figure we're gonna talk about game sticks in general. If people don't know, it's a stick that has a whole lot of video games on it. And if you're older, you'll remember you used to have to go and rent each individual game, and sometimes those games sucked, so you had to have it the whole weekend. So, what do you think of game sticks?
Man, lifesaver. I mean, it's allowed me to play all the games I used to not be able to play because I couldn't even get my hands on most of these games back
Yeah.
in the day. But overall, I mean, just the technology behind these things is pretty sweet. I mean, it kind of reminds me of a Fire Stick in a way, but a lot of these, use an OS called EmuElec or EmuElec, which is basically, it's similar to Corelec. Corelec is a video, like a media center type system, but you can also play games on that. But then you got EmuElec, which
So, what is it called
is
exactly? MU-ELEC?
yeah, like EMUELEC.
And that is like the actual like motherboard kind of in a way, like that runs
No,
it.
that's the software that's actually on here.
Got it.
So that's actually the what houses all the emulators. So it's EmuElec it's got two parts to it. It's got RetroArch, which is kind of like your back end, which boots all your emulators up, and Emulation Station's your front end, which it's actually basically, think of it like a website. You got your website that's got like the front end, all the design stuff,
Right.
and then you've got your back end that does all the work. That's basically what RetroArch is your back end that's doing all the work. That's like, okay, this is where we need to set the shaders. This is where we
Gotcha.
configure the audio, the video, and everything like that. But then your front end, all your front end is doing is saying, okay, we need to load this game under this category, and we need to use this emulator to load it, unless we change that emulator around.
Gotcha.
So it works. I mean, they're just, like I said, they're really cool devices, man. Really surprised that they actually run a lot of the games that they run.
So kind of going back to it. So, obviously this is just plastic. So within this, there is some sort of chip, right? And this chip is doing the processing. And you're talking kind of about like UI versus UX. So the way I kind of think about it is like when you go buy a drink and it has like that cool screen with the pictures and all, that's just the end user kind of is experience. It's not actually like inside of it and what's pushing all of the power, right? So you're talking specifically about what's pushing the visuals that we're seeing, and not to mention audio, frame rate, and things like that, shaders and all those things.
Yeah. I mean, basically these game sticks are just like small little computers. I mean, basically they house Linux. I mean, that's what runs everything is Linux operating system. That's what I mean, basically, so the system basically, I mean, it's just like, think of it just like a computer. You got your little hard drive, which is this little micro SD card that goes into it. Once that's in place, then it just boots up to it, but you still have to have all your drivers just like any other computer. It's like, remember loading Windows back in the day? Where, if you didn't have your drivers, certain things wouldn't work, and you'd have to, mess with it until you had all the drivers, and then finally the whole system works, after hours of looking.
Yeah, we talked about it earlier off camera about how I honestly had a really hard time loading PC games. I always thought PC games were so confusing until, Steam came out and really simplified PC gaming, honestly. It was very difficult before that.
Yeah, I'm not. I mean, are you just talking just the install overall? The install?
Yeah, just that you bought it, you're all excited, you're looking at the box art. I'm like, oh, cool, I'm gonna play this game. It's usually like a role-playing game of sorts, and I'm like, this is really cool because you couldn't get those games on console at all. And then like you would load it, and it'd be like D drives and C drives, and so many issues with frame rate. And to like a novice person, if you're just with your parent, it probably isn't going to work out that well if they're not into it,
Yeah, but I mean, do you remember back in the 90s or the late 80s or the early 80s, mid 80s actually, like PC games back then? like where you would have to load them up in DOS, like
Yeah.
stick the disc in, and you'd have to do like run. Basically, you just type in like the start.exe or whatever is there, or batch.exe or something, and within that those discs, and there's usually like 10 discs to one game.
Yeah, I remember that. You had to be kind of a pretty smart person to play PC games. It wasn't a casual thing, in my opinion. Like, you play Nintendo, you turn it on, you play Mario, you're good to go, right? Kids are all sitting in front of the TV. There's like 10 of us there. I couldn't even imagine if we had to sit there and wait for some dude to put some 80s PC game on, right? You couldn't do it. It's impossible.
Well, yeah, but think about 80s PCs games were like, you walk around and then you see something and you got to type on the keyboard like open door, or you have to type in commands for it, like say what's up, hello, and just to get the game, just to move on.
I remember when I was first introduced to that, I was in school, and some teacher brought the disc in, and I was a console Nintendo kind of kid, right? And she's like, oh yeah, you have to write, you want to walk forward. And I'm like, I thought to myself, I'm like, this is like work, this is homework, like that's not how my games work, but I get it, I understand it. It is cool if you know how to play those types of games. And we're talking like what, early like King's Quest,
Space Quest, Leisure Suit Larry, things like that.
When I would think of those games, I think my imagination got carried away with me. Like, I thought they were the pinnacle of what games were, and I'm like, I don't know how to do that. And it just seems like, for instance, when I would go to the arcade and I would see games and their audio was so much better than anything I was playing. And I'm a music dude. I like audio a lot. Sound effects, I love. Man, them hits were just like, and I go playing my Nintendo, I'd be like, dink, dink, and it's such a big difference,
Yeah, that I was talking to somebody about that the other day. Is going some games, going from arcade to NES might look a little better, but it was usually all arcade always looked better than most of the day. So you take Double Dragon, for instance, go Double Dragon arcade, then go Double Dragon NES, and you see how dull the game looks. This is like,
it's kind of funny because I played both of them and I really enjoyed them. I love Double Dragon, but I knew the arcade version, and you could just tell right away, like with the girl when they punch her in the gut and they drag her away. You don't get that in the NES version, it's just a lot more subdued.
Yeah, and I mean the graphics are just like, all right, but I mean they got us through. I mean, I remember finishing it. Hey, have you checked the Chuck Norris Double Dragon? Have you seen that one?
No, is that like one of those
you've
hacks?
Got it.
Oh, really? It's on the X2?
Yeah, it's on the X2. You should check that out. Basically, it's Chuck Norris going around and he only has to hit the characters one time, so he basically hits them like one or two times.
He is Chuck Norris,
and that's and it takes him out. So like the main characters that you would have to fight for a little while to get to knock out, one punch and they're done.
I would expect nothing less from Chuck Norris. Whoever made that game understood the fundamentals of who he is.
Yeah, my friend, speaking of, sorry to change the subject, I had a friend, his dad, who's a judo guy, they're real into judo, and Chuck Norris would always come. So he just lived like, probably a mile down the road, but him and his dad were always hanging out. Chuck Norris and my friend's dad.
What state was that in?
It's in Oklahoma.
Oh, it wasn't like LA or anything like that?
No.
Wow.
No. Yeah. Unfortunately, yeah. Well, I'm not gonna get into that, but it was fun times, dude.
That's
times.
Awesome. I love martial arts in general. I think I know a lot about all the different martial arts. Judo is extremely legit. It is when a much smaller opponent can just basically pancake smash you on the ground, and you don't even know. Like the way they turn their whole body and just like murk you on the ground. It's really something. If you've never seen the video, there's a bunch of videos of like really old judo masters fighting like younger guys.
Yeah.
Boy, oh boy, they wreck those guys, man.
Yeah, it's real popular here. But yeah. But back to the game sticks, man.
Sure.
And then I mean, not only game sticks. I mean, you got things like this too. Like this is like a small console with like. This would be faster than a game stick, but unfortunately the operating system on this thing is terrible.
Yeah.
This uses something called Pandora's Saga. I don't know if you've ever seen those. Have you seen those arcade joystick setups?
Yes, they look cool.
You plug in.
They're too noisy though. But
they
anyway.
use something called Pandora.
Okay.
That's the operating system, and I got this thing. They sent it to me, and they wanted me to do reviews on it, but it had that Pandora on it, and you could not fix the buttons, no matter what. There's nothing you could do to fix it. Wow. And to add games to this, you had to use there was some software called Pandora, and basically it's a pain in the ass to add software. So I quit selling it because it was just getting bad reviews.
Sure.
So,
and that's such like, if you can't get in there and really tweak anything, that means it's really set whatever technology's in there.
Yeah.
And you can't dig in the BIOS and stuff like that. Maybe you can, but you can't change it.
Well, I was waiting for it to actually disappear off TikTok, or at least go away, because then I could reload this with EMU-ELEC internally. But until then, I can't do nothing to it.
When you do those types of things, you're really like deep involved in like the files and like the whole paths of everything, right? Like that's kind of how someone would do that.
Yeah.
That's how I manage a lot of my content. I can only imagine. If you miss like one thing, the whole path is just wrecked. So that's got to be very complicated.
Well, I've done a lot of testing on these things, and so I'll manually compile them. Like I don't even use an image to burn them. I'll just manually like put it together, like everything where it needs to go, and it works.
Sure.
But the other, usually when you set these up, they're all an image, and you just burn the image to it. But what you were saying about paths and all that, yeah, that's what I do. I'll manually just set it up, put things where they need to go. So I make a partition, put those stuff where they need to go, that needs to go in that partition. Then on the other partition, I put the folders that need to go there, and then I create the games partition and do what I need to do over there. That's real easy though.
You work heavily with hierarchy and basically the way it all kind of just distributes out to where it needs to go, which is very difficult to do.
Yeah, I just make sure it's in the right spot, really.
Yeah, sure.
And just move it all around, move things around where they need to go. Because
I'm sure you know what the right spot is because you put it in the wrong spot many times, right? Like that's how you learn what the right spot is.
Yeah. And just recently I had somebody come to me with a different system altogether. They bought it off of somewhere, and it was like kind of a Windows system similar to what the Ken Hank, kind of that hard drive, but instead it just loads up in Windows. Well, the way that was set up, like I had to go in and configure the whole Xbox and move everything around and move all the configurations outside of paths and stuff just to get the thing to work. And then I had to make it like read only, just so that the system wouldn't override it and then mess it up again. So, there's a lot that you may have to do, because these systems are kind of dumb sometimes.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying? Like they're not sure what they're supposed to do, so you got to tell it what to do, and then you got to stop it from overriding stuff too. So it's just, I don't know. That's what's cool about these, because if you actually do mess up one of these game sticks, there's a file in there that you could actually just go delete, and then it would rewrite itself, and the game stick would be messed up still until you went in and changed a few configurations, like calling it where the games are and things like that.
So even if it's kind of broken, you can kind of go in there and like reset it to default, like beginning code, and kind of just work off of that again.
Yeah, and I wish more people that would buy these things would figure that out, like figure out how to kind of jump in there and do that, because they're messing them up. And like just recently, like for instance, one of the buyers, he had messed his up, and I was like, well, I'm going to use you as a guinea pig, because your thing's messed up as it is, so we're going to use you. So I created some small images to where I could just burn the first two partitions only onto it, and not the game partition, so all the games are still there. Burn the first two partitions back onto the drive, and then it works. Where was I going with that? Brave part.
All right, so we're going to move on to a different part of game sticks. Something I personally really enjoy is the nostalgia. So when I bought the X2, I was amazed at just how many games were on there. And the coolest part is like I'll think of a game and I'll type the first couple letters, and then we all get that feeling. We go, oh my god, it's there. But the coolest part, it'll be like Nintendo, it'll be NES, arcade, blah blah blah, and I'm like, I didn't even know there was a Commodore 64 version of this game. And it's funny to me just to see how the graphics can be interpreted, right? Because it can be very primitive, it can be very middle, and then you're like, oh, this is like a blockbuster movie version of the game. So with all that like being said, like there was this pizza shop near my house named Moe's Pizza, and I used to go in there after I would go to CCD, which is where you go to Catholic school at night. And me and my dad would go in there. And I remember as soon as I would go in the door, there would be Punch Out. And I would hear, Mighty Blow, Mighty Blow, Mighty Blow. If you know the game, you know Mighty Blow, right? So I put that on when I bought the X2, and I heard Mighty Blow. And like I closed my eyes, because I play it at night when I'm chilling. I like to kind of unwind with them sometimes. They're really kind of comforting. And man, I could see the tables. I could see actually Mo from Moe's Pizza. I could see my dad when he had like black hair, and it was really cool. And that's the thing I love the most about these sticks, is just it can really kind of give you a self-soothing hug,
Oh yeah, oh yeah, yeah, exactly, man. Because dude, I grew up with the 5200 and the Coleco. And I was able, you can actually put both of those on the X2, by the way, or the 5200 is already on there, but the Coleco can be added. But I always remember like playing Smurfs and all this, just being that kid. So being able to load those games on here and play them again is insane, because it just really takes you back, to the time that I took my Coleco apart and never put it back together because I thought I could fix it when it was probably just the controller that was messed up.
Real quick, I was that kid too that wanted to take everything apart when I was little, but I couldn't because we only had like one of something. So I'd be a real terrible kid if I just took apart the Nintendo, but I sure wanted to. I'm glad you did.
It all started with my dad, because my dad was a general manager for Radio Shack in the 70s growing up, like so the 70s into the 80s. So every Christmas he would bring home a ton of like remote control cars and things like that, like boxes full of it, like all the display stuff. And we would play with it for a while, then we would take it apart, and then it just kind of moved on to the game systems and the computers and things like that.
That's cool, though, that your dad had access to all this inventory and stuff, How cool.
That's where the computer stuff is, because, we're able to load on the game sticks now. That there's a emulator called Scum VM, and we can go back. So all those 80s games that I played on the computers, on those Tandy 1000s, like King's Quest, Space Quest, Leisure Suit Larry, all those games, I'm able to play those on the game stick again. And the cool thing about the game stick that I hadn't brought up earlier is when we're talking about how it's like a computer, you can hook a keyboard and a mouse to these things too. So any of those old school computer games, that used a keyboard or a mouse, you can still utilize them today on the game stick, and that's pretty cool. But but the nostalgia, it's like going through that, and then being able to load up the Coleco and playing the Coleco that I used to have, and then the 5200, loading up River Raid, loading up Burger Time, those games like that, and being able to play them again, and then getting the NES, years later, it's like, I started out on probably computer and like the Atari and the Coleco, and then like I said, my friends, they had the Nintendo and basically the Segas, and then finally I got one a few years later after it had been out. But going back to those games, like Ghosts and Goblins, Renegade, like those were like my beginning games into the NES days. Like those were my first two games, and I want to say, in Simon's Quest, like those were probably
it's a great game.
Probably my first three games actually. First game I got was Simon's Quest. Second game was Renegade, and I know the third, or maybe I got Renegade and Ghosts and Goblins on the exact same day, but I kind of remember all that stuff, But man, I never had a Sega though, and I wish I would have, and I think that's what we're looking at right here.
Are you talking about the Master System, or are you talking about the Genesis?
I'm talking about the Master System.
Yeah, I never had one of them. They weren't popular in America. That's what I've come to learn. It was just a different, didn't really work here.
Well, my friend had one, and his the system he had, it seemed like it was American. I thought it was. But it had like Space Harrier. That was like one of our favorite games to play back in the day. I think we used to go to the arcade, and that was a game that I think moved around whenever you like maybe you stepped onto it. Maybe I don't remember how that game.
There were a lot of those games back.
Or maybe you sat in it. Maybe you sat in it. Maybe and
I
go. But
I watched some of the guys on YouTube, some of the game dudes like Game Chasers and stuff like that, and I learned a lot watching them. But anyway, the Master System sold a lot better in Europe. And America didn't sell very well at all. So a lot of the European kids have a lot of nostalgia for Master System games, as we have before NES games. You know.
Yep. Yeah, and then Genesis. I mean, when Genesis came around, it was kind of the same thing. I never owned a Genesis. I had Super NES, you know, and then my friend down the street, he had the Genesis. So, you know, Sonic the Hedgehog and things like that. That like just to be able to sit down and play those games, it was like whoa. I just remember how cool it was, you know.
I think that Genesis for me honestly was the first time you were getting better audio, sound effects, and stuff at home. Genesis really was able to kind of turn it more towards an arcade experience because it had Altered Beast, which I think is a great game. And then I played it at home, and I'm like, oh my god, it's Altered Beast and not some watered down version of it, you know.
Yeah. Have you ever seen a guy named Mom, Where's My Computer?
No.
He's like a synthesizer guy. Well, he builds synthesizers, and he actually took a Sega Genesis and he attached it to the synthesizer, and he uses the SID chip within the Sega Genesis to create the sounds and stuff.
That's cool.
Going back to what you were saying about the audio and the music on the Genesis, because that's what I thought too. I always thought the Genesis had the coolest music because I was always used to the NES, you know. And when you went into the like the arcade and the Sega games in the arcade, they were always louder and bassier, and you know, just like they just stuck out, you know.
There is not to cut you off, but there's with Sega, there's the synths that they use sound actually excellent. So I can only imagine this guy who has the synthesizer. If you could have those synth sounds that the Genesis made, they're magic. They're really good.
Yeah. It's all built in. There's the chip. It's inside the Genesis. That's where the sounds come from. Wow. It's from that chip inside there. So, and it's called I think it's called the SID chip. I think that's what it's called.
I do remember when the Super Nintendo came out because they started to do a good job with music as well. And if you've probably played it, right? You ever play ActRaiser for Super Nintendo? Some great music in that game, man.
Yeah. Yep.
Way different than anything the NES was doing, you know.
Yeah, and I actually pulled that game up like probably 3 days ago, actually, when I was showing cheats, and that's what I was listening to. I was like, I need to play this game more, man.
Music's great, and even when he swings the sword, he goes like, hop, hop, and it has such a good like sound to it. I'm a big sound dude. I don't know, it's just always been that way. It's weird. I can hear music on the radio, and I'm like, oh, that's the A note, the B. Like I hear the notes. And it's the same thing with video games. Like sometimes I hear those hooks, and I'm like, I gotta figure that out in piano. You know?
Yeah. Oh yeah, man. Could you imagine like making some of the music for those games back in the day? Like when you listen to it, it's like, whoa.
Well, a lot of them were Japanese, and anything Japanese people put their mind towards, they're usually incredibly good at it. You know, I give Japanese culture and people a lot of credit, man. They are masters of their disciplines. Anything they take on, they're usually extremely good at it. Which makes me wonder, why don't Russians make video games? Because I swear they'd make some damn good video games. You know?
I think they make music software.
Do they? Because I know Kiev made a game I love. It's a bike game. It's called Trials. I love Trials, and that's actually made in Ukraine.
Yeah. You know, here's the thing. I probably shouldn't even bring this up, but you know, a lot of the Russians I used to know back in the day, when we were in like little like music group type, you know, like MIRC stuff. If you remember IRC back in the day, it's like chat stuff. Okay, well, it was like it was basically like chat stuff, but it was relay chats, and everybody would go in there and they would hang out and talk software. And something I noticed is they were doing more cracking of the software than putting software out, if you ask me.
Yeah.
You know.
Sure. Yeah, they're like, oh, cool. I can break into that.
No, but they do have some of the best antivirus out there. Like Kaspersky's, I think that might have been a Russian. Let's see where that was. You know, yeah, that's kind of off topic that we already talked about. Okay, so basically, yeah, Kaspersky, came out of Moscow, Russia. So I mean, they had probably like one of the best antivirus softwares that I used back in the day. I mean, it probably worked the best out of any antivirus I ever used, and it was the lightest until they really started updating, I think. But anyways, not really gaming, but anyways.
So it's in the same, like, the world of, basically computing. Development. Yeah. Only one I know is that antivirus they have here in America, where that guy went kind of crazy not that long ago. What's it called? What's it called? What's the
McAfee or McAfee or I called it probably like 3 different things.
Yeah, that guy was wild, man. He was like out in the middle of like the island somewhere. Like I don't even know. But anyway, thank you so much for joining, and I think this conversation was pretty great, very informative.
Man, I appreciate it, dude. And like, man, I just got to get better at this too, man. Like, this is my first time ever on a podcast or getting involved in one. So, like I said, definitely something to work on.
Well, I give you credit because I don't even know what I'm doing half the time, and it's always cool collaborating with new people and just getting different perspectives and joining in together on a topic. So you did great, man.
Yeah, you know what? I think next time, sitting down and actually maybe if I write down a bunch of topics to actually, or if we have a written, a bunch of like topics actually written down.
I did my homework slightly was ready.
Something like that, and then if you emailed it to me so I could see exactly, I just print it off and have it right in front of me.
But to everyone that doesn't know, this is Deep Fried Beats. He is a highly knowledgeable man. If you need any information about any type of cool stuff, computing, gaming, things like that, he has an abyss, a massive amount of knowledge. So thank you so much for joining me, bro, and we'll do it again.
Hey, I appreciate you, man, and thanks for having me on. And like I said, we'll definitely do it again. Like I said, hopefully I'll get better at this.
Hey, man,
as time rolls.
As I have other videos from some time ago, it's cool to watch your progression on camera. So
yeah, most definitely.
All right, man.
On that. All right, man. Well, have a good one, man.
All right, bro.
All right.